Oh my gosh. Forgot to click go live. And it's still not working. So what is the deal? There we go. All right. Well, that's embarrassing. So anyway, I did the countdown, I did the intro, and none of it was live. So certainly amateur hour here. I'm sure with my 20,000 followers, it's going to be quite embarrassing. So I guess I'll just talk a little bit, see if anybody's going to jump in either on stream or in the chat. As I was saying, I'm a bit rushed. Had family matters, and then really just wanted to take a shower. I had to shave, and I was just gunky. And so, yeah, that pushed me behind. And I would have been right on time if I'd have hit live. But oh well. So we have some things going on, which I already started talking about when I realized I wasn't live. I'm not really going to talk about them tonight. I don't know if I ever will at length, because, I'm not really part of the online atheist community, at least as far as YouTubes and streams. I've been on a couple, but, nobody knows me for sure. And just a few minor players would know me. And, I used to be very active in Facebook groups, and I've trickled off that because most people in those groups aren't very thoughtful and introspective and intelligent. And they don't want to learn. There's nothing wrong with being unintelligent or not educated, but they don't want to learn. They think they've gotten on Facebook and learned all they need to know about logic. So anyway, it's this guy named Derek Lambert. His channel's called Myth Vision. And a few years ago, he had a falling out with Dr. Robert Price. Dr. Robert Price is a New Testament scholar. He's very educated. I mean, he can just rattle this stuff off his head. And he's a mythicist, and that's the way Derek's channel started. I don't think Derek is a mythicist anymore, but supposedly him and Dr. Price got close. Well, Dr. Price has some, he was a Trump supporter. I don't know if he still is. I know he supported him in 2015, 2016. 2016 it would be, yeah. Maybe. I don't know. Yeah. And, has said some things about the riots after George Floyd that many took as racist. So Derek says he was forced to separate himself from Robert Price. And apparently Robert Price was, go with it. He said he understood. Okay. He's older than me. So, when you're old like us, you can, just things don't bother you anymore, okay. Or they might bother you, but you just don't hold a grudge. Well, a few weeks ago, Derek decided to post a video saying he changed his mind, and he is so tired of the woke atheist community. And if you've watched any of my videos, I'm that way too. Fortunately, though, no one ever, as far as that community goes, told me I had to separate myself from somebody. I did have somebody that said I should just keep some opinions to myself or I would lose friends, and I have lost friends. If that's at least Facebook friends, if and they wouldn't even discuss these issues. And if you're willing to separate ties with me and not even discuss it rationally for a good amount of time and then maybe go, okay, we disagree. I'm going to have to move on. Then I don't want you. I don't want you in my life because you're clearly not a rational person. Well, Derek has stated that he has decided after years that he's going to platform Robert Price on biblical matters, on religion, and he doesn't care what anybody thinks. And people blew up. Oh my God, I didn't even know they really blew up. But I had a video coming from my feed today from Gnostic Informant. And he, hey, how you doing? On Faith? Just talking about, I don't know if you're familiar with Derek from Myth Vision and how he separated himself from Robert Price. If you know Robert Price. But anyway, basically what Derek is saying is he's not going to let anybody tell him who he can and cannot platform. And if people want to separate themselves from him, F off. It's pretty simple. But Gnostic Informant, former Gnostic turned Orthodox here. Yeah. I kind of watched Gnostic Informant's video today. I had it playing while I was doing other stuff and look over when I needed to reference the screen. But apparently he's gotten into it with quite a few people. Some guy I never heard of, Daddy Pooh or something. I don't know. He did a stream with Shannon Q and Kip Davis and some others you might know. And he showed receipts. Oh, Chrissy Hansen. Yeah, but Gnostic Informant showed some receipts on how these people say a lot of stuff behind the scenes. But, you know me, I'm my own self. And if people don't like what I have to say, they have that right. But no one will tell me who I can and cannot associate with. I had a friend in high school. He's still my friend. He is right wing. He supported Trump. And in high school, I had another friend tell me that I would be a lot more popular if I just didn't hang out with my friend Jay. And okay, I don't care. All right. So since I have some people here, always happy to have you like and subscribe, and all that business, if you find it worthy. Also a bit interesting and probably certainly more entertaining was what I want to talk about tonight. Jordan Peterson did a on Jubilee. They set stairs around a celebrity or somebody. And the two people that made a huge impression were this guy named Danny. Forgot his channel name. Oh, it's in the description, isn't it? Let's see. This guy named Danny on Phil Talk. And then also Parker Get a Job. I think Danny was probably the more entertaining because Jordan really got upset with him. And it was pretty funny to watch. And those two went pretty viral, even though there were, 23 other people. But those two went pretty viral. And they got, Piers Morgan decided to invite them on his show along with Jay Dyer and Andrew Wilson. Now, I'm not impressed with the philosophical acumen of either of those people, and I'm not that familiar with Parker or Danny. Apparently, Danny is. He looks like a kid. Well, he's a kid to me. I'm twice his age. But apparently he's in his 30s, and he is he teaches philosophy. So he got into it with, Danny was more vocal of the two, as far as the two atheists went. And, I thought I had this saved. I'm not sure. I'm just going to search for it. Piers Morgan. So Danny's the most he was the most vocal of the two, and he pretty much got into it with Jay Dyer over the is-ought problem. And I'm sure just about anybody has heard about the is-ought problem. I had never really researched it enough. I kind of took it at face value. I really should open this in Firefox so that I don't get commercials. Just so you know, Firefox, if you have an ad blocker, still works on YouTube. Generally, Firefox is for entertainment purposes and for me, and I use Chrome for all the serious stuff. So basically, they made a joke, especially Danny, of Jordan Peterson. I mean, Jordan Peterson is one of the most dishonest people I've ever observed. And as you'll see in what I show, he will not answer questions honestly. Do you have okay. So I got a question here. Is that showing up? Yep. Okay. What issue do you have with Jay Dyer? You say he fancies himself a philosopher in the screen description. Just curious. Well, for one, he claims to have a degree, and he claims to have a valid argument, which is fine. Anybody with a basic knowledge of philosophy can make a valid argument, but being sound is more important. And he has presented his tag argument on a video, on a whiteboard that he wrote it out. So, I would have to go through, and it's a long, long thing. And I would much rather, since I don't know all those scribbles and notations, I would much rather he put it in writing somewhere so that I could copy it out and, go to Google AI and say, okay, what do all these symbols mean? And evaluate it, because I'm a word person. I'm not a symbol person. I have requested he do that on a couple of his streams. I have tagged him in a chat he did with Made by Jim Bob, or he was in a chat, or Made by Jim Bob was doing a video. And he hasn't even acknowledged I messaged him. And I also have told him several times, why don't you submit this argument to a philosophical paper? And I think those are all fair. And as far as I know, he hasn't done it. So for him to get on YouTube and say, I've got this argument and no atheist can refute it, and it hasn't been peer reviewed, and he only has, he is a clown of clowns. I can't even verify that he has a degree. I think he claims, so this is just me thinking, trying to recall, I think he claims to have a master's in analytical philosophy. I've never seen his CV, his curriculum vitae, and I really don't think he's ever written any papers. He could have, but I haven't found any, unless they're on that one place you can submit papers without really being a scholar. Academic edu. So that's my problem with Jay Dyer, is he just gets on YouTube and he says all this stuff, and he says atheists can't be defeat this argument. Well, okay, but someone like me, I probably, maybe I couldn't defeat it, but it's got to be in a format I can understand it. You just can't show me a whiteboard and go, here's the argument here, see, and it's perfectly valid. You can't do that. The other issue I have with Jay is just he's condescending and rude. And, as all those guys are, Made by Jim Bob, Andrew Wilson. And I really doubt that he has a master's in philosophy. I really do. And if he does, and I think I've asked him that before, provide your, well, okay. But the thing is, he's claiming to have a degree. Okay, Steve, he's claiming to have a degree. If you're going to claim a degree and somebody says, prove it, you should prove it. I mean, I could claim to have a degree. I could say I got a PhD in philosophy, but if somebody says, prove it, I would. I don't. See, I just think he's condescending and rude. I've watched some of his videos. The only debate, and this was maybe before he got involved with Andrew Wilson and them, so maybe he used to be a lot better. The only debate that I've ever watched where he was calm and polite, basically, was his with Matt Dillahunty. And they said they were going to have another debate, and they never have. And now he seems to be taking the approach of Andrew Wilson and trying to be rude and condescending. I'm assuming because that gets him views. Everybody likes drama. Andrew Wilson is from the Clown of Clowns. School of Clowns. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that, Jesse. I do. I agree. My email is on my channel page, Steve. You are free to send it to me. But I will say that the transcendental argument, in my opinion, at least offered by precepts, has not really made an impact as far as I can tell in philosophy. I've talked to some philosophers and they go, what? What are you talking about? They don't know these people. All right, so let's get started. Deacon Ananias, who associates with Tyler, presents its own variation that he found. All right, I would like you to send me that video, or I can search for it if I can put tag and Deacon Ananias. Father, cool. Yeah, I'll have to look that up. All right, let's get into this video. It's down there. None of this, the reason for reason. Thank you. I'll put that up for anybody to see on the screen. Okay, so let's just let Piers Morgan introduce these people. He'll do a better job than me, I'm sure. I got where is the present? The StreamYard stuff isn't intuitive for me. No, that's not it. Is it not going to show? I know to show to have sound, you got to do the exact tab. Oh, it's a Chrome tab. Wow, StreamYard is biased against Chrome. Wow. Okay, so I guess I have to put this back in Chrome, and we'll have to deal with commercials. Yay. Anybody need dentures? There you go. Let me, all right, I got it queued up now. You're not a serious person, uncensored. I kind of wonder, I thought this video was half hour, and then I saw it was almost 50, and I think I saw the half-hour version. I didn't know there was an uncensored version. So this might be fun. Please let me know if the audio is not coming through.
You're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either you're a Christian or you're not.
I won't talk to you if you're a smartass.
Oh, either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
Danny, you were the smart ass in the room, according to Jordan.
People can see the frustration that we have with Peterson. I would say that atheists are not the only ones that are frustrated. Christians are.
We have two gay-theists on the panel that have said that I've
See,
bullied
like this
them.
kind of behavior. Look at this behavior.
It's called a joke,
Yeah,
sensitive
they're
man.
funny, Dyer.
Oh my God, look at this behavior. This behavior is
This
out
guy-
of
You
control.
are two gay theists.
It's too
so
much
it's
bad
not
behavior.
behavior.
Wait, I'm sorry. I thought we're supposed to be loving to thy neighbor.
You don't know what loving
If they're
means.
being
You don't even know
bigoted,
what that
They
means.
can't
Let's
even
not,
know
let's not
what
talk over each other.
So, of course, this is a Piers Morgan show, so you can't accept too much philosophical insight. But just the attitude and dishonesty I see from several of the participants, I'd like to point out.
20 committed atheists recently took on Professor Jordan Peterson as part of Jubilee's Surrounded series. It's fair to say it got quite intense, especially for Dr. Peterson. Two exchanges in particular took the internet by storm.
So do you believe in the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good notion of God?
What do you mean by believe?
Do you think it to be true?
That's the circular definition. What do you mean
How
when
is
you
that
say you
circular?
believe?
How is that circular?
Because you
I think what he should have asked was, it doesn't matter what I think believe is. You tell me what you think believe is and answer the question.
Added no content to the answer by substituting the word true and believe.
I said you think it to be true.
You're a Christian.
Generally, truth is seen as that which corresponds to reality, Jordan.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either you're a
'cause I
Christian
won't
or you're
talk
not.
to you if you're a smartass.
Oh, either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
Okay, so you're saying that you don't believe something if you wouldn't.
Actually, I wonder. I'm assuming Jordan Peterson's being paid for this, and I wonder what the contract says, because who was it? I don't listen to him much. There's about 3 right-wing commentators, and I think 2 of them have been on Jubilee, and one of them had a very large trans-identified person that came up to them and basically just had their say for 5 minutes and didn't let the other person talk at all, and finally just yelled at them and gave them the finger and walked off. So I mean, I don't know if Jordan's allowed to say, I won't talk to you. I mean, I guess he could just sit there and listen, but fine. If I've watched this stuff before, I would just chastise him on something I've watched.
Didn't die for it?
Not really, no.
Okay. So then,
How would you define belief? Something you say?
okay, so I explain. Like, I could believe it is the case that this pen exists, but if someone like threatened my life, right, I would lie in order to be able to save my life, right? Like, I think you would do that too. You wouldn't lie to save your
Don't
life.
be so sure.
You wouldn't lie to save your life?
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong
This one's
YouTube
funny.
video,
You're really quite something, you are.
aren't I? But you're really quite nothing, right? You're not a
Okay,
Christian.
I'm done with him.
Well, now, in the wake of that video, one of Peterson's young inquisitors posted on X, Peterson was no Christian. Let's move on. Are there any actual Christians that want to debate? Which is quite the challenge. But one that, of course, we on Uncensored are only too keen to facilitate. So making their uncensored debut from the Danny Phil Talk channel, Danny Shaw, and Parker from the Parker Get a Job channel. And we've arranged for them to take on 2 of the most notorious and fearsome debaters on the internet, who also happen to be conservative Christians. The king of blood sport debating, Andrew Wilson from The Crucible, and the equally forthright author, comedian, and commentator, Jay Dyer from the Jay Dyer channel. Welcome to all 4 of you. Well, let me start with you, Parker. Were you surprised by the reaction to what went down with Jordan Peterson?
Actually, no. I was actually expecting this to happen, as I knew before this, as I watched the Alex O'Connor debate against Jordan Peterson, that he was very, very not likely to, like being associated with Christianity. So I knew actually going into this that I was going to ask him a question specifically about whether or not he believes this to be the case, and that he would likely be not very upfront with his answer. So I actually kind of expected there to be a response like this. Now, I didn't expect it to go as viral as it did, as there are literally tens of millions of views on.
I know people that James McGrath, a couple others, they say they're Christians, but they don't believe Jesus rose literally from the dead. But if you asked them, are you a Christian? They'd say yes. And Jordan makes a big deal about it and makes it harder than it should be. And he really should just go with the most common definition of Christian, is that Jesus literally rose from the dead and died for our sins, and we need to believe in him to cleanse us of our sins. And Jordan it's just quite strange that he makes such a big deal about it.
Clips associated with mine and Danny's against Jordan Peterson all over social media. So it's actually really cool to see that, everyone across the board, whether they be Christians, atheists, Muslims, right, etc., actually see that like he's really not wanting to answer the question there because he doesn't want to be associated with Christianity for some reason.
And Danny, I mean, you were the smart ass in the room, according to Jordan. What's been your reaction to the fallout?
I'm generally happy that that people can see the frustration that we have with Peterson. I would say that atheists are not the only ones that are frustrated. Christians are, right? Here we have Peterson saying things like, yeah, I think Jesus might have resurrected, but I don't know what that means. Yeah, I might be a Christian in some sense. I'm a one-of-a-kind Christian. It's all wishy-washy. We're all frustrated, and I think that the video is the culmination of that frustration.
I'm just going to fast forward to the good parts.
Okay, well, the good news, like I told you, is we found 2.
The board.
These 2
types of
Anybody need a Vampire the Masquerade game? Okay.
preconditions for a worldview issue.
All right, here we go.
Depends on what you mean.
Against your Christianity, how would you take them on, given what happened to Jordan?
Well, it depends on what you mean, Pierce. Depends on what you mean. You know, how would I take them on? Well, I think there's a lot of different ways that you could critique an atheist position. Most of the time, I argue from the three branches of philosophy: epistemology, metaphysics, and ethics. Those are just the three branches of any worldview, and everybody has a worldview, whether they know it consciously or not. So I would critique the foundations of the atheist materialist worldview to see if it's rational, if it's coherent, if it can provide a justification for knowledge or ethical oughts. So I think that would have been a much better route. In fact, Peterson used to kind of take that approach back when he debated Sam Harris. He would call out the is-ought problem with Sam Harris. When he debated Matt Dillahunty, he would call out the exact same types of preconditions for a worldview issue that I used to do, or I usually do. So I think that'd be a better route than just sort of having this ambiguous, Jungian position of non-committal, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to you, Parker and Danny, that I've interviewed Jordan Peterson a lot, maybe 5-6 times on Uncensored. Quite long interviews, often quite emotional. He's an emotional guy. I would disagree with Andrew about him losing his edge. I think he's still got the edge. I also think that, putting aside the whole debate about Christianity and whether he is or not, he's always been oddly ambiguous about it for someone who's so unambiguous about everything else. But that's his right. He's entitled to do that. As a force for good, though, for young men, I do think that in comparison, for example, to Andrew Tate, that Jordan Peterson has been a far better influence over the minds of young men of your kind of age.
Well, War Jesus, that would be a separate discussion. And I could say a lot on that.
Than someone like Andrew Tate would ever be. Would you agree with that, Parker?
I actually would agree with that, although the bar is literally in hell.
Right. I mean, you must see some positives in the general messaging that Jordan
All right, no,
I think it's good to what is improving towards their lives and holding that.
I want Jay Dyer. Come on.
Influence on young men, because it is huge.
Yeah, it's such a vast difference. I would say that it seems like that Jordan Peterson has benefited people, mostly in the psychology realm, like, the whole 12 rules for life and stuff, which a lot of those rules seem.
Well, Pride's always been completely astroturfed. I mean, to be honest, right from the very beginning, it's been astroturfed.
Where's the
It was
worldview
always
stuff?
pumped full of government money, NGO funding. It was pumped full of corporate money. There was an article that came out, you can find in the Drudge Report, it came out today from, I believe it was Daily Telegram. It was pretty interesting. They went over, a lot of the modern Trump administration and what they have done with their executive orders. A lot of companies have begun moving away from trying to kind of fund this, and it hasn't been popular for the last couple of years anyway. There's been a lot of pushback on various large corporations, companies, and NGOs for trying to pump kind of artificially these organizations. One of the things that article points out, which I tend to agree with, is that, hey, look, ultimately, when these companies are doing this, people lose trust for them. You remember there was a big thing with Target not that long ago. Anytime this comes to light, there's actually a backlash. People can kind of see that it's artificially held up. There's no reason for it. It's silly. It has never really been about gay rights. It's
What do you
been
mean
about
there's no
readers.
reason for it? What do you mean?
It's
what do you mean
been
there's
Sexual domain was good for men.
Yeah.
And whether Tate was good or Peterson was good. And now we're talking about ethics in the sexual domain, which there's no basis in their worldview for anything to be morally,
What's the argument for
objectively
that?
right or wrong, other
Why
than
would
their
anyone
personal
believe that?
preferences. So
Yeah, what's the argument for that? But I guess, I don't know, because I watched the abridged version, and maybe they interrupted Jay before. Maybe Jay interrupted them before, but right here, certainly, Danny is interrupting Jay.
So if there's
anyone
nothing
believe that, Jay?
objectively
You're just
wrong,
making a claim.
there's no reason why bigotry is wrong. Why is bigotry wrong?
Well, I want
Whoa,
support your
okay.
claim. Don't run from your claim. Support it. Right? We have no. But you're saying we as atheists have no basis of morality. Support that.
Yeah, no epistemic basis for getting an ought from an is.
Yeah, that's a claim. Okay. Well, you're saying atheists
No, it's an
can't
argument.
account
It's a
for
famous
morality,
argument.
right? You're saying that atheists can't account for morality. So what's the argument for that?
So once again, he's asking for the argument. Jay will dodge.
You can't get an ought from an is the argument. Back to Hume.
That's not the argument. That's a claim. An argument needs to be backed by premises or evidence.
It looks like you don't know what an argument is. Come on, reason. Try to go from one line of reasoning to another.
Jay making fun of him.
Do you know what an argument
You
is?
cannot get an
Coward?
ought from an is. You're an atheist.
That's
In
just
a materialistic
okay, but what does that
worldview,
have to
That's a claim.
there's
do with
no ought.
atheism? What does that have to do with atheism?
In a materialistic, atheistic worldview, there are no oughts.
First of all, I'm not a
You
materialist.
don't know the basic problem
and
of
that's just
ought
another
from is?
claim. That's just
It's
another
not a claim, it's
Can
an
you support
argument.
claim?
It's a famous historical.
Look,
You don't know
you're
the
just
difference
a
between a
coward.
claim
You
and an
made a claim.
argument.
You can't defend it.
It's an argument. It's
So Jay, and I'm sure Parker, or no, Danny, is very familiar with this argument. I'm sure he is. And that's probably why he's pushing Jay, because he knows Jay's making a baseless claim. And I'll try to show that when we're finished. And Jay is dodging. Jay is just going, well, that is the argument. No, that's just a statement. You know, I could say the sky is blue, but that's not an argument.
goes back to David Hume.
Oh my gosh.
Can you tell us what
You know, I would pay. I actually did. I had some Google credit I get from something. And I thought, oh, I can use that on YouTube to pay for no commercials. It's 25 something dollars a month. Even my free credits were gone within a month. It's just ridiculous how much they charge. I can pay 15 for Netflix.
You don't know.
argument
You
is?
didn't even know that.
Right.
You don't know
Look,
the difference
everyone,
between.
look what just happened. Look what just happened. This guy said.
Just what just
atheism
happened is
does
that you
not
didn't know the
foundation
difference
for
between an
morality.
argument and
Why
a
are you
claim.
over talking to me? Why are you scared? Let me talk. Right. You just claimed that atheists don't have a foundation of morality. I asked you to defend it, and then you said you can't get an offer from an is. What the heck?
That's
like,
the argument. That's
where are you
correct.
going to
It's
get from
called
that
an
premise,
argument.
right? You can't derive
It's an
that.
argument. It's not a premise. It goes back to David Hume. You just didn't know that.
Okay, can we get I think
Wasn't
we're
there
going,
any-
guys,
Give an
guys,
answer to it.
I think
I'm
we're
sorry
moving
that you
slightly
don't
off topic. Let's bring it back to Pride Month. I want to play something which has had a lot of people talking on social media. This is Sesame Street, where all the puppets holding hands, making up the Pride flag, and they say, on our street, everyone is welcome. Together, let's build a world where every person and family feels loved and respected for who they are. Happy Pride Month. I guess I would say, Parker, again, the problem with this is it's this kind of enforced virtue signaling.
So I don't guess I need to look at that right now. Yeah, he was pretty spicy on the Jubilee. I actually haven't watched the whole Jubilee thing. I just watched outtakes and maybe fast forwarded through a bit. But and certainly it was entertaining. But I think if he would have remained more calm, Jordan Peterson would have looked even worse. But, you know, it was entertaining. He was the most entertaining speaker. Andrew, I think, when I recall, he was pretty quiet during a lot of this. If you don't know, Andrew Wilson is the one that made Matt Dillahunty rage quit. A year and a half ago, maybe November of 2023, when he brought up trans stuff in a debate they were supposed to have, which was about Christian morality versus secular humanism. I think that's what it was. And I'm really not a fan of Andrew at all. And at least as far as his online personality goes, I don't like him. He could be a gem of a person in real life, but he just, you know, he does this for money. So he has this character. I don't know. But I defended his position. I said, I don't think Matt should have ran away. He shouldn't. He acted like a baby and he ran. I mean, if your position is we were supposed to have X debate and Andrew Wilson did not want to have X debate, well, that means you're in a position to really demolish your opponent, because all you got to do is keep saying, what does this have to do with this? What does this have to do with this? And if he's not addressing the topic of the debate. Yep. Jay, this is why I said, someone asked me earlier, Psy Prodigy. I think I know who you am if I recall your handle. Um, just let me know if I'm correct. Yeah, this is what I told somebody else. They said they asked why I call him in the description characterizes himself as a philosopher or something like that. And yeah, I mean, this is exactly it. Stuff like this does not impress me. And especially, even if your opponent takes the low road, I don't think you should. And Jay's over there going, do, 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 do. And he does that on almost every debate he has. And again, I guess he does it because it gets him views, just like it gets Andrew views. Again, War Jesus, this is not the topic. I'm not really an expert on Big Bang Theory, but you know, sometimes you just got to default to the experts as far as that goes. So the is an ought problem that he is citing. I think it applies, if it's a problem, I think it applies to theists as well as atheists. If you go to the, I need to stop sharing that. If you go to the SEP, the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, of course, being that David Hume is a major player in the history of philosophy. And I've always heard this and I've never investigated it. And I still always kind of thought, how is that a problem? So let's look at what they have to say. Where is it? Unfortunately, I'm in here without my scrolling thing. Where the hell? Okay, it is on there. I couldn't see the screen on the, okay. StreamYards. All right, so the is and ought. Hume famously closes the section of the treatise that argues against moral rationalism by observing that other systems of moral philosophy, proceeding in the ordinary way of reasoning, at some point make an unremarked transition from premises whose parts are linked only by is to the conclusions whose parts are linked by ought, expressing a new relation. A deduction that seems to Hume altogether inconceivable. Attention to this transition would subvert all the vulgar systems of morality and let us see that the distinction of vice and virtue is not founded merely on the relations of objects, nor is it perceived by reason. Few passages in Hume's work have generated more interpretive controversy. According to the dominant 20th century interpretation, Hume says that no ought judgment may be correctly inferred from a set of premises expressed only in terms of is, and the vulgar systems of morality commit this logical fallacy. This is usually thought to mean something much more general, that no ethical or indeed evaluative conclusion whatsoever may be validly inferred from any set of purely factual premises. Number of people endorse. Let's see. Other interpreters, the more cognitivist ones, see the paragraph about is and ought as doing none of the above, which would be if moral evaluations are merely expressions of feeling without propositional content, then of course they cannot be inferred from any propositional premises. Some see the paragraph as denying ethical realism, excluding values from the domain of facts. Some read it as simply providing further support for Hume's extensive argument that moral properties are not discernible by demonstrative reason, leaving open whether ethical evaluations may be conclusions of cogent probable arguments. Others interpret, so what we're seeing here, I'll leave this on the screen and you guys can pause it if you want to read it or something. What we're seeing is there's more than just Jay's interpretation. And I've seen a lot of Christians throughout this is ought problem. In fact, one of the first discussions I got with the precept was actually a person I know in real life. And he brought this up and I kind of went, huh, what? So it does throw people off. And so in philosophy, there is no, per Graham Oppy, there is no consensus. So, even that's even Graham Oppy's opinion. So maybe another philosopher says there is. Let's get back down here to my, things. So the question is, does this apply to Christianity? And I think it does. So here's an example I had written out of getting an is from an ought. People are selfish. Therefore, people ought to act in their own self-interest. So it's stated a fact, and then it's trying to get to an ought. But there's no argument from that is to an ought. And that's what Hume was saying. And I think that applies to Christianity. Because you can say, find my notes again. Okay. So tell me if the Christians in my chat disagree with this. God is holy. God commands us to love others. Therefore, we ought to love each other. But Hume's challenge would be, even if it's true that God says X, why does that mean I ought to do X? So the argument would be God exists, God commands X, therefore we ought to do X. And they're moving from an is, which is a description, to an ought, a moral command. And Hume would basically say, oh, nope, hold on. You need to explain why God's commands create moral obligations. So I really don't think that Christianity, the Christian worldview, is any better than an atheist in that position. An atheist can say, calling people names hurts people's feelings. It's a fact, usually. Therefore, we shouldn't call people names. So there's the is-ought distinction, the fact and the ought. But someone else could say, well, what if I enjoy calling people names? Let's see what we have here. Psi prodigy. True is a value placed on a proposition. Correct. I agree. I'll say I agree instead of correct, because I think there are some people that disagree. Big Bang Theory is supported by evidence. However, our present laws of physics break down at P1 Planck second. Oh, so he's responding to the Big Bang Theory. Is it true? As a result, we can say nothing about the spatial temporal state of the singularity itself, and we won't be able to until we develop a unifying theory of classical physics and quantum mechanics. Okay, back to David Hume. David Hume observed that descriptive statements, facts about the world, cannot logically entail prescriptive statements, moral obligations, without inducing additional premises. Correct. Hypothetical imperative, not categorical. God commands X is not an is. Correct. And is a descriptive fact. So Walk with the Spirit says, essentially, because God objectively knows right from wrong, because he knows everything. So Walk with the Spirit, would that be divine command theory? Natural law theory? Let me know. And you assert that doesn't work. But again, you're stating what you would say is a fact. I don't. But I'm sure you think that is a fact. So why is it the case that because God objectively knows right and wrong, which I would disagree with, because he knows everything, okay, why do we need to do what God says? Why? Where's your ought? You're saying that makes the ought. because he knows what is going to benefit you overall. Why ought I do what he wants just because it will benefit me? What if I hate myself? You still didn't tell me whether you're trying to approach this from divine command. Okay, there you go. You still didn't tell me what you, whether you're coming from a divine command theory position or a natural law position. Or, well, you're certainly not giving me the third option. So do you think Christianity solves the gap because God's commands create moral obligations? Walk with the Spirit? Three watching now. Woo! Because I would say it doesn't. So the Euthyphro dilemma, correct, Prodigy would address this, because it would say, is something good because God commands it, or does God command it because it is good? If it's the first, then that means morality is arbitrary. If it's the second, that means goodness exists independently of God. So we don't need God. You know, just because Prodigy might tell me chocolate ice cream is good. If I already know chocolate ice cream is good, I didn't need Prodigy to tell me that. So which position is it, Walk with the Spirit? Is it good because God commands it, or is it does God command it because it's good? And therefore, if moral truths exist outside of God, then we don't need God for them. So why ought, if moral truths exist outside of God, as some more realist would say, why do I need to do what God says? Because I can find them without God. So Prodigy, I've been clicking this thing. Premise 1, descriptive fact. That person is spanking a child. Descriptive fact. Premise 2, line, insert is ought got filler line. P2 must be objective. Conclusion, normative, prescriptive statement. That person ought or ought not hit the child. Moral value, someone ought or ought not to stop them from stealing, hitting the child. Moral duty. So God is good, so it's the same thing. Okay. That it's kind of a circular argument. Yeah, I know what you meant, Prodigy. Is it good? I mean, explain that statement, because I don't want to assume what you're saying. I think Prodigy says God is good does not bridge P2. Moral realism is based on emotion. So if you don't have a transcendent source for emotion, I thought you can't exist, and thought you can exist. So yeah, you won't have any issues there in non-existence. This is true, but doesn't mean I want to be immoral while I am around. And there are ways to gram out morality without God. Sam Harris says well-being. Christine Korsgaard appeals to reason and self-identity. Peter Railton uses social and evolutionary basis for ethics. So, atheists can have foundations for morality. The only thing is, the Christian or another theist would say that's not good enough for them. And I would say that's not good enough for me. So I think what you're saying, from my worldview, Kantian ethics is objective and does not involve emotion at all. Walk with the Spirit. Well, I mean, from my worldview, there is a hell after death, and if you behave evil and you require salvation through rebirth in spirit. Okay, I could say from my worldview, if I do what society regards as bad things, I'll be punished. So I'll be good. I ought to be good so that I don't get punished, which is basically what you're saying. You're just saying there's a worse punishment. No, I've heard that argument before. Prodigy states moral realism is not based on emotion. Yeah, I'm not that familiar with moral realism. I actually think that theists are anti-realists. That could be false, but that would be my conclusion. Because well, they're saying morals are within, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, walk with spirit. They're saying morals come from God. And God, actually, I don't know if I could argue that they're anti-realist, but I also can't argue that they're realist. I'd have to investigate that more. It's like existing. By existing, you are using God to exist. His power is what sustains you. So if you deny him your entire life, he may deny you at death based on your heart, generally. Moral realism holds that moral statements are objectively true or false, independent of human opinion. Correct. So that would be the question. Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to think of. If God, if it's held within a mind, then it's subjective. So morality on theism would be objective morality. I mean, subjective morality. So therefore, it would be anti-realist. Unless moral realism is independent of human. Is it independent of all opinion or just human opinion? Because in that video, Jay does say that, God is different than humans. So if it only applies to humans, then maybe they could be more realist. So Prodigy, yes, but the morality of this is based on how it feels. If we didn't care about people being unalive, no one would call it a crime. That's true. I mean, yeah, we have, from my opinion, we have evolutionary need to care about each other, to protect our tribes and species, going way back. See, what was I going to search for in that video? Realism was the same as object. Aaron McGurr, what's it doing? See if I can find where they talk about that. Show the script, you stupid thing. There you go. Yeah, let's go to 45. So they're talking about the R word. Let's just say somebody's growth was retarded. That's a proper usage. Hope nobody's offended by that. Guess I'll keep the things on. Back to share screen, present. Share screen. There we go.
That are mentally disabled, right? And so it has that connotation. Unlike the word dog, when Jesus used the term dog, right? There's no such connotation, right? You'll have to be reminded of why it's considered to be a slur, right? I mean, it's like you forgot.
Yeah,
That's
but
just
so is
made
like
up.
the word.
This is
So is the
nothing.
word
This is
moron.
made up.
So is the word moron. The word moron had a really negative societal connotation, and it still does. And people use it all the time, just in lieu of the word retard. They'll just say you're
Right,
a
but that's
moron instead of you're a retard.
The
It's like
R word is more
you're
recent.
hang on,
I think
hang on.
that matters.
You're begging. Hang on. You're picking and
Arbitrary.
choosing. Yeah, you're picking and choosing which thing to be selectively offended by. You're not. I don't. So like, let me ask you guys this honestly.
I don't think you can pick. I don't think you pick and choose what you're offended by. I mean, you could pick and choose depending on who says it. Probably the most primary example would be the N word. If a black person says it to another black person, it's typically okay. If they put it in their music, it's okay. But if I say it, even if I just use it as a reference, somebody would be offended. But I don't think you generally pick and choose what you're offended by.
I want you guys to answer me fucking honestly. Does the word retard actually offend you?
Should a Christian say that word? Because when I was a Christian and the way I was taught, cuss words are bad because they confer an intent, and you are abusing the gift of language that God gave you. Let me know what you think.
Yes. I think it's fucked
You,
up for you to
Danny,
use. I've been
does it
very
actually
clear. It's
offend you,
fucked up.
Danny, when somebody says
Yes.
the word
Wait a minute.
retard?
Yeah, it does.
So
It
if
does,
Zach
especially in public
Galifianakis,
places and professional places.
so Zach
like this.
Galifianakis does some when he does comedy and he does a movie and he makes a joke and says retort. Is that
Well, that's something else I want to address. When Piers introduced Jay, he said he was a comedian, and I was just taken aback by that because I've never ever had the impression he's funny, not like a comedian. But if you guys know of a performance he's done that might be somewhere, let me know. It's a comedian.
is that also bad?
I'm confused the context of what you're referencing. Is he specific?
Let's go back.
So
It
with
does,
Zach
especially in public
Galifianakis,
places and professional places.
so Zach
like this.
Galifianakis does some when he does comedy and he does a movie and he makes a joke and says retort. Is that also bad?
I'm confused the context of what you're referencing. Is he specifically trying to
No, wait a
refer to
minute.
the
Now,
R
so
slur?
now
If he is,
context
then
matters.
yes.
So now
Yeah,
the
he's
context
trying to
matters.
allude to the word retard.
I don't. Okay, then yes, that's wrong.
Yes, that's
Okay.
wong.
I
So
thought you were
it is
saying
like
like
any
someone. I
word
thought you were.
that references
you-
another word now is wrong, like moron.
So specifically, in terms of the one I thought you were referencing like someone responding to an argument. I thought the particular term that you
No,
were using.
Zach Galifianakis in a comedy movie saying retort
I
as a
understand.
joke instead of retard.
So if your
Yeah, and
friend
I think
says
that's
to
incredibly
Parker,
fucked up to use.
Okay, so now also any word that refers to the word
Right in place specifically of the.
is. Yes, it is.
No, it's not. How is that a critique?
Yes, it is. If something's purely subjective, then I can come with all the same claims with all the same force, and there's no way to resolve the two. That's why purely subjective arguments fail.
Wait, they're not being a
I think Christian arguments are subjective.
resolution, particularly between the moral disagreement of me and you, isn't a critique, particularly of my perspective.
Then you can't say anything is morally wrong. There's no ought from an is.
Wait, I can say something is morally wrong under my perspective. You're misunderstanding subjective morality.
You're not giving
Can
it.
you, wait,
you
I have a
can't tell
question.
me why
I have
it's
a question.
wrong morally,
I have a question.
objectively,
Well, then
if I
I'll
can
ask you this
also
question.
counter it.
Can I ask you this question? Do you think that morality is true dependent upon God's stance or independent of God's stance?
Ultimately, it's grounded in God.
Okay, so
Right,
it's
and
subjective.
What's that
God is a
mean?
subject. Yeah, God is a subject.
No, that's
so.
not a subjective argument. The argument,
Wait, God is a
the argument is
subject.
that it's objective.
God's
The
a
fact that a
subjective.
person
God is
makes an
subjective.
argument doesn't make the argument subjective.
As far as I understand it, if God is a mind, something in a mind, held in a mind, is subjective by definition. And they're going to challenge Jay on this and say, how is he different? Because Jay's going to claim God's different. And again, I don't think Jay is able to defend it other than asserting logic is based on emotion. Did Walk with the Spirit actually say that? Those are still based on emotion. Oh, okay.
Your argument
God is
is
a
pure
subject.
subjectivism.
Is God a
Two
subject?
different things. It's a category error.
Is God a
How's that a
subject?
category error?
How is that a category error? Good question.
It's two different categories. A subjective
Yeah.
argument for
We're
ethics
we're
is
two
different.
different people.
It's two different categories. That's how it's a category error. Okay, well, what are those categories? Let's see if he answers.
Too, right?
Different than
how's it
a
relevant,
person
right?
who's a subject making an argument. Those are two
The
different
point is that God is a
categories.
subject; He's not an object, right? We're subjects, right? We understand morality in terms of
That's
God. In
a
fact,
that's you're equivocating again.
Look, can we bring this
The
back
fact
to the
that
point
God's
here?
Wait, hold on,
subjective
no,
doesn't
no.
mean
No,
that
no,
it's
you wanna
not
run away.
objective. That's
No, you
idiotic.
can't.
Wait, God having his particular view on morality is no different than me having my view because we're both subjects.
The
Can you tell me
argument
what a
is that
subject
it's an
What is it, Jay?
objective
What is a
morality.
subject? Jay, what is a subject?
You're equivocating on the fact
What
that
is
a
a subject?
subject is making an argument versus the
do you
argument
think
being
objective
subjective.
No, you said
That's a
wait,
philosophical
wait,
category error.
Jay, I
This
asked
is
you
like
if
talking
true.
to children.
I asked you.
It's a
I asked you- I asked
category
you-
error, you idiot.
I gave you the youth throw dilemma. I asked you if it's true dependent upon a stance or independent of a stance. You said it's dependent upon God's stance. That's subjective by
No,
definition.
I said that the argument for Christian ethics is not a subjectivist ethic, and because God is a subject, it doesn't make the system subjective. That's an
No, it make it subjective because God is a mind.
What do you
equivocation
think
error on
subjective
your
means,
part.
Jay? What does subjective mean? What does subjective
Purely
mean?
relative to the individual.
Okay, is God an individual?
So is God an individual? Because it's relative to God, right, Jay?
Dependent upon a stance.
Is God an individual?
That doesn't mean that the ethic is subjective.
Just
It's an
answer the
objective
question.
ethic. You're
Is
just
God an
rephrasing.
individual?
You're substituting the word individual for subject.
Jay's dodging.
I'm asking you if God is an individual.
you
Yes
did.
or no, Howard?
That doesn't mean that the ethics is subjective.
Yes
That's
or
a
no?
system and a,
Who's running now?
it's an
Is God
Why is Andrew here? Why are Andrew and Parker here?
an
logical
individual?
argument that's
Just answer the
different
question.
from.
Let me bring
subject.
Andrew.
This is a
Andrew, you wanted
basic
to.
mistake.
Andrew, you wanted to get in here.
Jay's getting cooked, so he's
what
got
were
to
you
get
gonna
him out.
say?
Jay's getting cooked.
You're making a dumb
Dodge the
mistake of
question.
language.
Hang on. Let Andrew come in, please.
Yeah, so I mean, this is kind of obfuscating from the point. What does any of that have to do with the point of retard? So, and
He
you being
brought up
offended by
subjective
the
morality.
word.
Are you
Yeah,
listening?
Yeah,
What?
can you hang on? I'm talking to Parker, not you, Danny. Calm down.
I'm
Wait,
talking
you've
to
been
you,
cutting
Buster.
people off this whole
I don't
time.
understand. I don't understand, Parker. When a friend of yours comes over and he says something to you, like you're in private, and he's like, "Hey, hand me that," and he tosses it, and you miss it, and he goes, "You retard." You literally stop the kind. You go, "Don't say that. It's very offensive." Do you say that? It's very offensive. I really don't like it when you say. Do you dress him down, Parker? Yeah, someone calls you a retard in a friendly way.
I'm
I would like to
sorry,
say
my
something.
mic cut out, so I couldn't hear you.
I want to post
Yeah,
something to
if
Andrew.
you have a
I wanna
friend,
post
if you have
Andrew.
a friend, shut up, Danny. If you have a friend, Parker, and your buddy comes over and he like tosses you something and you drop it and he's like, you retard. You dress him down. Do you go, "I can't believe
Yeah, I
it.
would
You,
say-
you called
yes,
me a
I would say that's
retard."
wrong.
Why?
Yes.
That's
I would like to
hurting
say
other
something now to
people's
your
feelings.
response. I would
But
like to
who's
say
around?
something.
Yes, I would say that.
Parker, who's but
Andrew,
who's around to be
It's
Parker?
not hard
Who's
to
around to
understand
be
Parker's
offended
position.
except
Just let him
you?
talk.
Who's
I'd like
around
to
to be
talk,
offended
right?
but you,
that
Parker?
I would like
doesn't
to ask
change whether or
Andrew a
not I think
question.
it's wrong.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I do think that whether or not a word is offensive is subjective. If you guys can think of any words that are objectively offensive, but since words have meanings and how we interpret them, I don't see how a word, objective existing outside the mind, belonging to the object of thought rather than the thinking subject, not influenced by personal feelings, unbiased. So yeah, the way you take a word is subjective. So I would say, as far as this goes, Andrew is correct. I think Jay is trying to twist it into something it didn't need to be. But I think Andrew is correct. You know, what makes it offensive other than the way you take it?
Let Danny.
So I guess the question would be, it's not that the word is offensive, but if you're well aware that it has a potential to be offensive, or that you know the person is going to take it offensively. For example, the moment Andrew knows that these two guys are just going to take the word, you can't even refer to the word, they're going to take it offensively, and he keeps doing it. And as you can see, he's smiling here because this is what he likes to do. He likes to badger his opponents.
Can you respond, Danny?
I want to give Andrew a hypothetical. Suppose there's this unknown society where if you show this signal, everyone's extremely offended. They'll get very angry, like people get angry at typical slurs like the N-word, right? Would you go around just doing this?
Logic? The Vulcan sign for logic.
Duh, Andrew. No, it's live long and prosper. Gosh, I'm not even a Trekkie. I like the movies and the shows, but
this game,
EVE Online.
you're not ready for it.
Is that still around? It's been around a long
Do you
time.
understand the hypothetical?
What are you posing a hypothetical?
So imagine you go to a
can you use really small words, bro?
Okay, imagine a hypothetical, right, where you're going to a society you don't know about, but all you know is if you do this.
I'm imagining a hypothetical.
Let me finish. You didn't understand the hypothetical, so I'm having to repeat it. So let me finish.
Yeah, repeat it. Use small words.
Let's say this is extremely.
Let's say this signal
is extremely offensive in that society. Really offends people. Would you go around just doing this to troll people, or would you not do it?
I would definitely tell them to live long and prosper, bro.
Okay, you're just not engaging in the hypothetical. You're not a serious person.
What do you mean? That is serious.
Is that what I'm trying to illustrate is that if a term really offends a friend of someone, right, or if you're or a family member or something like that, why would you use the term but to piss them off?
The trouble is that we've got to a place in our society where the language police are now so out of control that we can't even use the word in hospitals, mother, because somebody who is a trans person, trans man, who's having a baby objects to the word mother.
That is true in some cases. I know I saw it. I think it might have been Wisconsin. They had a legislator that wanted to insert birthing person and something else for mothers instead of saying mothers, because some people might find it offensive. And I think that's just going too far.
And that's the problem with language police, is that if there's
you guys don't talk about that. No, it's not, because I'm not a Christian. I don't hold those perspectives.
Yeah, but hang on. That's okay. Hang on. That is fascinating. So, in other words, you don't mind doing the slur against Andrew over things he cares very passionately about religion because you don't share his religion. Therefore, you can't offend him. Therefore, you can't offend him.
How is that a slur?
He said, would you use the word cannibal? You said, you wouldn't care.
That's not a slur. That's not a slur.
Hang on.
It is to him. It is to him.
A slur was not defended.
Okay, I think what they said was, if I recall, was saying the Eucharist was cannibalistic. So, I mean, yeah, that would be something you wouldn't say to Christians that sincerely believe it. Maybe in this situation you could, but not normally, because I think they've been offensive to each other the whole time for 50 minutes. So, but normally you wouldn't say that.
What offended people?
So hang on, so Parker, you decide what. Hang on, just to be clear, Parker, you are the slur monitor.
Say it is offensive, therefore you ought not to say it, right?
Are you? You decide what isn't a slur, and therefore you, Parker, can say what the fuck you like, long as you have decided it's not a slur. You see the flaw in the argument.
It's all
Obviously, we have definitions on what slurs are. I don't know why that's a confusing thing. That it leads to a. No, actually, you're equivocating because I'm using their own.
I think we should do this again.
I hope they do. I hope they could do a more calmly debate, more calm debate. I didn't know there were two versions. If I'd have known, I probably just wanted them a 30-minute because it was easier to find stuff. But so I do know on Digital Gnosis and Danny's channel, I think they did a dual stream. They talked about this. I recommend it as a watch because Digital Gnosis is pretty smart. So is Danny. I think Psy Prodigy is aware of the challenge I've laid to some arrogant Christians. I don't throw it out all the time, but if somebody's really boastful, I say, okay, and I sent this to Danny and I said, here's a suggestion. Challenge Jay to a formal debate. And in a formal debate, if Jay pulled what he pulled in this, informal debate, he would lose automatically on points. And, do intros, rebuttals, 2 10-minute crossfires where one person gets to ask the other questions and you just control the time, and then closings, and hire a debate, a professional debate organization to have a judge score the debate, and the loser reimburses the winner. And let's see if Jay will put his money up from. There was also David Wood and Apostate Prophet. I don't know if he has a new name now. Apostate Prophet was an atheist that has been on Atheist Experience and stuff, and he recently converted to Orthodox Christianity, which is what Andrew Made by Jim Bob and Jay Dyer all say that is their version of Christianity. And the one good thing about them is they will challenge other Christians and other theists. Because I know Psy Prodigy and I have gotten irritated at people that try, certain people that will go unnamed, Alejandro, that try to say that almost all religions worship the same God and there's no difference. And no, there is a difference. Sorry. So you guys are keeping the chat going, you Psy Prodigy and Walk with the Spirit, aren't you? I couldn't keep track with all that. So Psy Prodigy asked, please define logic. You want the laws of logic or what they do? Logic is how we reason information. So Prodigy says, define logic, not the laws of thought. I just did, bud. The first paragraph of the Stanford Encyclopedia Philosophy defines logic as formalized language. Correct. So you accept logic as a universal then. That's good. At least you know God exists. It merely ensures we arrange our thoughts properly, just as natural language syntax correctly. I would agree with Psy Prodigy. Yeah, I used to think that logic meant there was some sort of structure out there. And I've since, I think correctly, came to the law that, like they say, the 3 laws of thought, identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle. Those are merely, if we don't assume those 3, we can't have a coherent conversation, at least as far as logical structure goes. Not that they are rules to the universe. My narration or what I was playing? Well, I mean, I hope you guys don't mind me sharing what's going on in the chat. I want people to know what was going on. So yeah, I don't think Jay has much of a position with the Izot gap, because I think it applies to everything, every system of morality. I could be wrong. Every system of morality that I'm familiar with. So I don't think he has a leg to stand on, and it's just very telling that, as I told somebody earlier, I think they left. I don't know. Steve. So he's Orthodox now. Yeah, Jay, I said that Jay fancies himself a philosopher. And, I elaborated that Jay's never submitted for peer review his argument. He says I think he puts it as it's his own tag argument. So it's not just the tag argument, it's his tag argument. And he shows it on a whiteboard if you weren't here earlier. And, it's all these symbols. And I'm going, dude, I don't know what the hell that says. And I know in a debate with Matt Dillahunty, maybe I'll cover that sometime. He did his opening. And Matt said, I'm not sure there was an argument presented. And Jay said, yes, there was. So, one of them was right and one of them was wrong. And clearly in this thing, Danny and Parker kept pushing Jay to elaborate, and he just couldn't do it. So no, I don't think he's a philosopher. I don't think any philosopher worth his merit would just dodge those questions so much. And Peterson is just an absolute joke, Jordan Peterson. It's just, I don't know why people give him time. I've thought that from the beginning. I've never been impressed with him. I don't know. Is anybody familiar with psychology? Is he well respected in psychological fields? I mean, does he write papers? I know he's a professor or was. And I've had people say that in his field, he's good. So how long have I been there? Almost hour and a half. Yeah, you guys have had some good discussion. We'll have to do it again sometime. Who was that in earlier that I didn't think could stay on topic? Yeah, War Jesus. War Jesus just came in and made a bunch of assertions, and then I guess he just left. I had something funny the other night. I had some guy come on. I was doing a different stream, and I didn't notice him till 20 minutes later. He told me I had a voice visit me on March of 2022, I think, and it told me to do something, and I need to ignore the voice because I thought it was God, but it was actually Satan, and I need to ignore it. And I don't know, it was hilarious. All right, man. Thanks for Walk to the Spirit. Yeah, I'm gonna get off here myself. I appreciate you guys coming. I think this is-ought problem in Hume is a very difficult thing to break down, and I hope I did a acceptable job. And I don't think Jay Dyer is that impressive. Andrew, well, he doesn't claim to be a philosopher. Doesn't claim to have a degree. So, I think, if I didn't say it before, I think Danny has challenged Jay to a debate, and that's why I suggested the format. Because if you the problem with Andrew and Made by Jim Bob and Jay Dyer, they do this debate and they have the openings, and sometimes Andrew or Jay or Made by Jim Bob don't even really do an opening. They don't even do it. When you got an opening, use it. And they don't even do it. And they just want to whittle around until they irritate their opponent so much that their opponent is flustered. And I think with the time format, they would be at a severe disadvantage. Thank you for subbing. Welcome to Spirit. I don't know if you ever want to come on video live. Yeah, welcome to Spirit. If you're on Facebook, there's a group called Theism, Atheism, Philosophy, and Science. We are admins there, and we are try to stay on top of it. I mean, I don't read everything, but when I get a heads up and notice somebody being real offensive, I don't care if they're theist or atheist, they get a warning. And Psy Prodigy knows that I'm pretty strict. So, because I'm done with just laying insults and bad arguments back and forth. I try to step up the bar. I don't read everything, but I recommend it. Again, Theism, Atheism, Philosophy, and Science. My name's Logan. So, yeah, it's very hard to have, too much of, because the chat's limited, right, to so many words. very hard sometimes to get all your ideas. So yeah, I think what was I thinking? Oh, another thing Jay brings up is worldviews. I think I'll do some reading on worldviews, and I really don't find the worldview argument important. You know, Jay says, "Well, our worldview, we can justify this," and I'm like, "Okay, I don't care what your worldview is. What if I have a worldview? Because you know there are different aspects whether you believe in God or not, and this and that, and I can't remember them all. I would have to have it written down to remember them all. At least as far as the common aspects of a worldview. And what if I have, say there's 5, and I have 3 of them correct, and the God thing, you know, is up in the air still, and the 5th one is still up in the air, or I'm wrong about. I would rather have a worldview with 3 solid entries of 2, 3, and 4 than to have a cohesive worldview that's false. And in my opinion, Jay he may have, I don't even just say he has a cohesive worldview, but he thinks he has a cohesive worldview because they're more into the coherent theory of truth than the correspondence theory of truth. And I don't think that does anything for you. I don't care if I could have a coherent worldview built on Lord of the Rings. Say I think Lord of the Rings actually happened, and I have a coherent worldview with all the Einarhar and the creation and all that, and I have a coherent worldview, but it's based on a false assumption. The Lord of the Rings is not true, and that would be my opinion of Christianity. So it's because the argument Jay, I assume, uses for tag is about comparing the worldview of a non-believer versus a God believer, reducing the non-believer's worldview to absurdity. Yeah. That would be what Bodson and can't think of the others. Yeah. And I don't accept that. Just because some of my worldview might be absurd to him doesn't mean that some of it isn't true. And just because his worldview's not absurd doesn't make it true. Jay, I assume, is a presuppositionalist, but either does not realize it is circular or does and is dishonest. The latter try to shift the burden of proof. Ultimately, a true statement is circular. First, it fails to do that. There are many ways to account for everything they claim. Second, that does not absolve them of circular reasoning. So, Prodigy, did you start drinking? Yeah, if you come to the group, Cy Prodigy has a lot of posts. He has some pinned, and I don't know how we're doing on theist admins, but if we get to know you and you're pretty cool, we want theist admins to balance out the atheist ones. Yeah, precept to justify Odin. So according to precept, Odin is real. Man, Odin tied himself to a tree to seek insight for us. He lost an eye, man. Lost an eye. What you got to say about that? I don't know what leprechauns did. Leprechauns didn't. All right, man. I'm going to jump off here. It's been an hour and a half. I really appreciate you two keeping the chat open and walk with the Spirit, subscribing. So, yeah, I'll get off here and try to think of a topic for next Monday night. If I make it on Monday nights, I need to do it a regular thing. I was putting it off and sometimes just doing spontaneous things, and I didn't get any active people in the chat except for my buddy that let me know I heard something in March of 2022. But yeah, I'll try to think I'll either look at worldviews or is logic based on emotion. I don't know if Walk of the Spirit said that, but I really like biblical history. Oh yeah, I still got to do my Psi Prodigy is familiar with it. I still got to do my syllogism that destroys Christianity, and it's hyperbole, but I think it's still very effective. All right, guys, thanks a lot. Take care. Have a good night and all that. Look forward to the next time. Bye-bye. Oh, I got to do my outro, man. That's too much. I'll have to cue it up next time. Later.